Hello, we have come to the end of Booker Prize season 2021, so I thought it would be fun to do another live reaction video to this year's live ceremony announcement, which is taking place online. It is happening in real life, but it's a much smaller ceremony than they normally have to keep things safe, and I thought we could all share in the excitement or the disappointment of seeing who will win the Booker Prize this year. And there's been a lot of speculation about who's gonna win. I made my own prediction video, and I think this is where book prizes differ from sports competitions, that like we readers, or most of us readers, even though we might have preferences of who might win, really personally, I would be, happy to see most of these authors win. I mean, even Patricia Lockwood, yes, even Patricia Lockwood, whose book out of these six I probably liked the least. But I did go to the Booker Prize shortlisted readings at an event last night, a couple nights ago, and actually Patricia Lockwood's reading from this novel was really moving. Obviously, she read from the second half of the novel, which is the much more emotional part of it, and I was really drawn into it and moved by it, and so it made me think about it in a different way. And I also really appreciated how she talked about the way when she was writing this novel, she was thinking of it as a historical novel, that it's been commented a lot that this is about the internet age and social media and the present, but really she was thinking about this already as something in the past, which is an interesting perspective to think about. But of course, the book I'm really rooting for and hoping to see will win is Bewilderment, as I talked about in my video, where I made a big geeky chart with coming up with all of my solutions of who I think will win this year. And it was wonderful at the event the other night, listening to Richard Powers talk. I think he gave some of the most slick and impactful answers to the questions that were read aloud. But also I got to meet him finally in person after having interviewed him through a Zoom call online. I got to meet him in person in a very crowded and slightly chaotic signing queue. I mean, the poor employees of the South Bank and the bookstore trying to. I mean, you have different authors all sat there in a big row, and everyone has a different book to get signed, and so to try to coordinate different signing lines, it's a really big challenge. But I got to speak to him, and I got my book signed. Oh, look at that. Isn't that lovely? What he said, and about having a wonderful conversation with me, and there was a slight moment of awkwardness because I was wearing a mask, obviously to be safe, and I was trying to explain who I am, and that we had an interview the other day, and it took him a little bit to clock who I was, which, I mean, even if I wasn't wearing a mask, I wouldn't have blamed him for not recognizing me because I mean, he's met so many people and done big tours for this book, and so I mean, why would he remember me? But yes, it was wonderful that he did remember who I was. But the actual ceremony will start in just a couple minutes time, so we don't have long to go. And honestly, I think it could be any of these books that could win this year. And I've seen, it's been really divided about who people will think will win, and fairly evenly. I mean, most people think either Bewilderment or The Promise will win, from what I've seen of people's reactions online to my video and other people's videos that they've made and social media posts. But there's also a lot of support for Great Circle, and no one is talking about this. And it'd be really wonderful to see A Passage North and the Fortune Men win as well. To have an author that is so young and smart as Anuk Arudpragasam, it would be amazing to see him win. And also Nadifa Mohamed, the way she wrote, even though this is, technically a historical novel, I think as the only British author on this year's shortlist, it really says something meaningful about Britain today and attitudes and in the country today. And so, it'll it's going to be really exciting to see who wins. So, yeah, the ceremony will start soon. I think I just press play when it's going to begin. And of course, I've suited up for the occasion. If you can believe it, I've still been working from home. So the only occasion I've had to wear a suit, since I'm not going into the office, is when I'm sat here in my library watching a prize ceremony like this. And it's fun to dress up every once in a while. And also, I have a little bottle of bubbly, Tesco's finest, of course. So, nothing but the best to pour myself and enjoy while watching the ceremony. So I'm going to press play now. And hopefully it'll just start. Oh, okay. Well, it says the live stream is going to start soon. So that'll give me a chance to open up my bottle. And hopefully there's no technical issues. I think I'm on the right page to actually watch this. It says no playing, so yeah, that should work. Makes me nervous, and it makes me nervous opening a bottle of bubbly, like especially here in my library. I don't want to get if it like sprays, I don't want to get my books wet, and I don't want to get my computer wet, and but okay, we'll see how it goes. So I think I'm also not very good at opening bottles. Here we go. Oh, I thought there was going to be a pop. There's no pop. You disappointed me, Tesco's not Tesco's finest, Sainsbury's finest. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, whatever supermarket chain. I expected there to be a pop, but there isn't. Anyway, I will fill my glass. And, why hasn't it started yet? It's 16 past. It should have started yet. Maybe I'm on the wrong page. I'll check in a second. See, there are bubbles, but yeah, there was no pressure. Hey, there you go. Where's the video? Maybe I should refresh the page. Okay, it says the live stream will start soon. See, the trouble is I don't know if it's delayed or if I'm just not doing something right to actually be watching it. Well, I guess I'm just gonna sip my... Oh, here we go. Okay, finally. Whew, I can drink.
Booker Prize Awards ceremony being broadcast live on Radio 4's Front Row, iPlayer and the BBC News Channel. We're coming to you live from the Radio Theatre in Broadcasting House in London with a socially distanced, COVID-safe audience.
But very safe.
No less excitement in the room. And we are delighted to have all 6 shortlisted writers here and some special guests. The nominated books range from A Meditation on Time and War in Sri Lanka to A Contested Inheritance in South Africa, an exploration of what happens to our minds when we go online, and A Miscarriage of Justice in Wales. A troubled child finds solace in the night sky, and we have a female aviator flying over the Antarctic. So congratulations, first of all, to all the nominees. Anuk Arudpragasam for A Passage North. Damon Galgut for The Promise. Patricia Lockwood for No One Is Talking About This.
Someone giving
Mohamed
a cheeky wave in the background.
The Fortune Men. Richard Powers for Bewilderment.
Yay.
And Maggie Shipstead for Great Circle.
Yeah, Maggie. I forgot to say also, there's going to be a press conference with the authors afterwards, which I have access to and will be able to watch, and we'll actually be able to put a question to the winning author. So that'll be very exciting and nerve-wracking. But yeah, so stay tuned for the end of that, not just the reaction to the actual winner, but yeah, that as well.
Writer and editor Horatio Harrod. Actor Natasha
Going through the judges.
Novelist and professor Chigozie Obioma.
He's
And
a great writer.
The former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams. Now, as we know from past Booker Prizes, picking the winner would have been a really tough assignment.
Why the Archbishop as a judge? Who knows?
Those judges, Professor Maya Jasanoff, who is a historian of the British Empire at Harvard University.
Such a small audience. It's so funny.
So you've obviously read all the long lists and you knew about what qualities drew the shortlist together. And I wonder if you could say what qualities you think the shortlisted novels share.
Well, first of all, they're all
tough.
terrific. But beyond that, I would say that they all
Very
share
diplomatic.
a sense of innovation and interest and excitement about language and what can be done with stories. They're all very immersive, albeit in very distinctive ways. And we were struck that many of them, indeed all of them, one way or another, really sort of meditate on the way that our present moment relates to those that preceded us and those that may be yet to come.
Well, I was thinking, you're a historian yourself, and even in those one-line summaries I gave, you get a sense of these novels, in a sense, reflections on the times we're in by looking at the past, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are all living in a time right now when we're quite aware that things are different.
I mean, you could say that about most novels, but
in part different
sure.
from what they looked like in the past, and we're in some ways trying to deal with the legacies of the past, which many of the authors here tonight are looking at. And we're also aware that things may change even more in future. And that's something else that some of the authors here tonight are very deeply engaged in.
And I think it's fair to say anyone who's been following the Booker Prize over the years will know that in terms of the reporting of it, there's often thought to be a trade-off in judging the Booker Prize between experimental form and readability. This year's books have all been a joy to read, and I wonder where the balance lies in thinking about judging the prize.
It's really difficult, isn't it?
I think that, we can thank these authors for being able to be so creative and innovative and captivating. I think that one of the things
captivating
that we respond to as judges are books that we feel are pushing the form in new directions and giving all readers something new to engage with that way.
And if maybe it's an unfair question, what surprised you about this year's Booker reading? Even the long list, just what came in, how reflected on them.
One of the things I want to say about that actually has to do with my fellow judges, who were really wonderful partners in this process. And, I don't think most of us have the experience of reading so intensively and with such fellow engaged, committed readers who have their own distinctive tastes. And so it was really incredible to not just, of course, be exposed to wonderful books myself, but to see what landed with other readers and then to be able to revisit books with their opinions in mind myself.
Fantastic, Maya. Thank you so much. And Maya Justinoff will be talking again with her later in the show, and you're going to be announcing the winner. So thank you.
It really is the most amazing thing, judging a book prize, having such long, in-depth conversations about books. I mean, I've judged a few book prizes, and yeah, you have some really amazing, deep conversations.
Directed by graduates of the BBC's new creative scheme, and they made beautiful films. And we're going to hear two of those now, starting with Anuk Arudpragasam.
I mean, they are really lovely films, but
is set in the years after the end of the civil war in Sri Lanka in 2014, 2015. Really, it's not a story. It's the account of a young Tamil man who lives in Colombo, who's kind of scarred by guilt because he was unaffected by the war that affected so many members of his community. And really the story is just this young man, Krishan, taking a train to the northeast where he goes to attend the funeral of a woman who was at one point his grandmother's carer. She's a woman who grew up in the northeast, who spent her entire life there in the midst of war, and who lost both her sons during the last few months. So in a way, it's a kind of restless prose, or because it doesn't rest, but it's also a prose that is meant for, in a way, restlessness. It's meant to slow down the mind or the lungs that move too fast.
The evening was gathering over the landscape, and standing there at the entrance to the cremation ground, Christian gazed for a last time at the brilliant red glow of the pyre. All of it alight now, the wood and the casket, and most likely the body inside it too. All of it burning brightly in the lifeless grey light of the evening. It would take several more hours for the burning to be complete, he knew. The human body contained a lot of material. Not just flesh and bones and organs, but feelings and visions, memories and expectations, prophecies and dreams, all of which would take time to burn, to be reduced to the soothing uniformity of ash.
Paul G. Raymond reading from Anuk Arudpragasam's A Passage North. Now to Damon Galgut, author of The Promise. His extract is read.
Very dramatic shadows with
I'm
the
telling the
books.
story of the Swats, who are a white South African family living just outside Pretoria, where I grew up. And I've taken the approach of telling the family history through the device of 4 family funerals, mother, father, brother, and sister. Each of those funerals happening in a different decade with a different president in power. And I'm trying to show the passing of time and what it does to the family, what it does to the country, what it does to the politics of the country, and what it does to notions of justice, I guess. You know, the real subject of the book for me, underneath the politics and all the family stuff, is time and how time is passing. So, you know, if you want to take a message, it would be mortality is what underpins all of our lives. We're all getting older and everything changes as time moves on. That's really the kind of medium that I was working in, time.
You have to wonder, with all this publicity, do the authors get tired of explaining what their novels are about?
Understand. It's not yours to give. It already belongs to us. This house, but also the house where you live and the land it's standing on. Ours. Not yours to give out as a favour when you're finished with it. Everything you have, white lady, is already mine. I don't have to ask. White lady. She looks steadily at him while he quivers. I have a name, Lucas. Thunder. In the distance, like a crowd shouting in a foreign language. He makes a gesture with his hand, throwing her name away. What's happened to you? I woke up.
Interesting section to read.
David Johnson reading from Damon Galgut's The Promise. Now, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, has been a public supporter of the Booker Prize since 2013 and has presented the award many times. In 2019, she invited the joint winners, Margaret Atwood and Bernardine Evaristo, for tea at Clarence House.
Ooh.
And it's been the turn of the latest winner, Douglas Stewart, to join her by the fireside. His visit was particularly special because the front row audience has been invited too, and we can listen in to their conversation, recorded before tonight's show about Douglas.
I mean, it shows how this award really is sort of about status and privilege. I mean, the Duchess of Cornwall, I'm sure she's a passionate reader, but really, what does she... Is she an expert to be interviewing these authors? But well,
you've always got your first reading memories, even if you were very young. Can you remember what books you read to start off with?
Actually, it's given me a lifelong passion for this author, but it was the works of Thomas Hardy. It was actually Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I think was the very first book I read for pleasure from cover to cover. And in fact, Tess is an inspiration for Shuggie Bain, because I think very much about all the forces that affected Tess in the 1890s, and then in the 1980s, Agnes is still, really affected by the men in her life. I can't even tell you how important the library was in my childhood, and it was always just a very safe space. It was a tranquil space. And it was a place that you could go and sort of shut out the world.
It's the peace and quiet of the library, isn't it? You can go in there, everybody's quiet, you've got time to think.
How many libraries does she go to regularly?
It's so important to keep these libraries in schools.
As you say,
I can imagine her taking a book out of the library.
An awful lot of peace in their environment to be able to focus on a book, but also peace within themselves. And libraries, I think, are one of the few places that will allow them to have those moments of respite, or just to shut out the world and enjoy a book.
What actually gave you the inspiration to sit down and write Shaggy?
When I was writing the book, I didn't tell anyone I was trying to write it because I wanted it to be an incredibly personal project. And I was thinking very much about the Glasgow that I grew up in, about my own mother, my own family. So I wanted to memorialise that very clearly, warts and all, but also the strength and the dignity of the characters as well as their struggles. Oftentimes, mother stories and young queer men in very masculine places are often invisible. And so Shuggie for me became a very personal document in that way, to say we were always here, we're also on this landscape.
It must have been a cathartic moment when the book was actually, there it was, literally given birth to it.
That's right. And taking very personal experiences and turning them into a work of fiction forced me to have empathy for these characters and to to not think about really what it was like from one boy's experience, but to think about why mothers might feel that lack of hope, or why the men might act as they were. And that's the power of writing fiction. I think you have to, if you don't agree with what your characters do, you have to at least deeply understand why they would do it. I never knew when I wrote the book, the journey that the book would take me on. I mean, it's utterly transformed my life, from winning the Booker to being here with yourself and being in beautiful Clarence House. I couldn't have imagined any of it.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here. I think before we sign off here, I think you'll agree we wish all the Booker nominees the very best of luck.
Let's hope none of them are too gay to be considered winners this year, referring, of course, to a line from a Guardian article recently. I hope a really gay winner will have this year, but I don't think any of these novels are really that gay.
Now time to look at two more of our shortlisted writers for this year's award, starting with Patricia Lockwood.
No One Is Talking About This is one of these unusual books that doesn't have a story in the same way that other books do. In the first part, the protagonist is trapped in the internet. It's a place that she calls the portal, because I didn't want to use the word internet 1,000 times in my book, because that would feel disgusting. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote on that part, and then I began the second part, which is quite different. And I talk about that being a rupture into reality, where the protagonist is suddenly delivered into what she calls real life, into her own body again, and into interaction with a very special child, her niece. You know, we might already be at the point where the internet is inside our bodies. When you're holding your phone, it already feels like a part of you. It doesn't feel like something you can put down. So I don't know if it's actually useful to think about the future. I think that the future is here. I think that we're already living in it in terms of how the internet operates in our lives.
Are you crying? Her husband asked, slinging his backpack into a chair. She stared at him blurrily. Of course she was crying. Why wasn't he crying? Hadn't he seen the video of a woman with a deformed bee for a pet, and the bee loved her, and then the bee died? Her teacup rose to her lips, tilted, floated away again. Raising her head from her spellbound reading a moment later, the cup was nowhere to be seen. Not on the side table, not spilled on the floor, or rolled between the unmade bed sheets. Its watercolour garden, shy-thatched cottage, and rim of gilt were gone. She spent half an hour looking, increasingly spooked, for what hummed in her right hand was the feeling that she had put it somewhere inside the phone.
Fiona Button reading from Patricia Lockwood's No One Is Talking About This.
Shadows.
Now to Nadifa Mohamed. Her extract is read by Elmi Rashid Elmi.
The Fortune Men is based on a real-life miscarriage of justice which happened in Cardiff in 1952. It's a fictionalized account, taking those real people as inspiration. And it's also a look at love, at how people deal with grief, and how people are undaunted in the face of power. Thankfully, the case file was open at the National Archives, so that was the base of my research. But then I also wanted to interview as many people as I could to bring to life what happened. So I met with people in London, in Cardiff, in Somaliland, anyone and everyone who could tell me more about what happened to Mahmoud Matan. The chief thing that probably worked against him was institutional racism. And I don't think that has changed as much as we would like in this country. And then globally as well, various forms of discrimination mean that the justice systems across the world are imperfect and often quite brutal towards the most marginalized people.
Mahmoud stumbles over a loose cobblestone and corrects his balance self-consciously, looking left and right. He is paranoid that his steps look strange, flat-footed. His shoes are a size too big to allow room for the painful corners on his feet. You cannot look like prey here. You cannot show weakness, or your days are numbered like those of the Somali drunk the police beat to death last year. Mahmoud had learned to do the black man's walk early on in Cardiff. To walk with his shoulders high, his elbows pointed out, his feet sliding slowly over the ground, his chin buried deep in his collar, and his hat low over his face, to give nothing away apart from his masculinity. A human silhouette in motion. He has perfected not being seen. He knows people call him the ghost. And it satisfies him.
Oh, they're so good. Wow.
Ilmi Rashid Ilmi reading from The Fortune Men by Nadifa Mohamed. And we have met now some of the nominees, and we're going to speak next to another winner, Ben Oakley, one of Britain's most acclaimed novelists, who won the Booker Prize exactly 30 years ago. Ben Oakley took the prize for The Famished Road, a novel drawing on Nigeria's Yoruba folklore tradition and narrated by a spirit child. Please welcome Ben Oakley.
Richard Powers sort of looks like Andy Warhol there or
I
something.
can't believe it's been 30 years.
I know, it seems to have gone past in a
Flash.
wonderful dream.
And well, speaking of dreams, you made a wonderful comment about The Famished Road. You once said the book was fed by the dreams of literature. How do you look back on winning the Booker Prize?
I look back on it with great fondness, actually. I remember the years before, the length of time, the struggle, the effort to find a new voice, to tell a new kind of story. And then you write this book and you wonder if anyone's going to read it or if they'll cut you away to the madhouse because you've done something very strange and used a kind of a strange form. And then this happens and it changes your life.
And of course, The Famished Road was one of a trilogy of novels. So I wonder how we would look back on the legacy of those novels, of the trilogy.
I think, it's a kind of an immodest question for me to answer.
You don't have to be modest. You won the Booker Prize.
But I would say that it continually inspires. I keep meeting people for whom the books, the questions that they ask, the nature of the innovation, the way in which I constantly wrestle with reality and how you express reality, and the novel form itself, as was said earlier, there's the constant stretching of the form, which is, I think, one of the great responsibilities of the artists and writers in our time, is something I feel very passionately about and is embedded in those works.
Well, clearly you have maintained this kind of long-term relationship looking at the prize, and I wonder how you think the prize and the books that are shortlisted have changed over the 30 years since you won it.
Oh my goodness! I think they've changed a great deal. They've become more inclusive. The prize has become more open to richness of experimentation, voices across the world. There are more people of color, more women. Open to gender possibilities, open to sexualities. It's become richer, it's become bolder. The questions around it are more intense. And each year you feel, as you can see with this year's shortlist, ask quite deep questions about the human condition, about the current state of the human spirit.
You mentioned that
very good advocate for the prize.
The impact your books have made on them, and I wonder how far you think readers may have changed over the past 30 years for these books.
I think when writers change the nature of their art, I think readers change too. But I think the real change comes about with society, with the opening of voices, with especially young black readers across the world, America, Africa, readers in India, passionate about the novel, passionate about the prize itself, and passionate about the need to be included in the great dialogue that's taking place in our times.
Now, I have to say, journalists, of which I am one, are always looking to label the Booker Prize and how far it captures the zeitgeist of what's going on in the world each year. And as a writer, writing your own book, I wonder how you feel about that.
Well, I think every writer, I keep remembering something that Goethe said that haunts me. You take your fist, you thrust it into life, and what you pull out, that's your material. And I think every writer worth their salt or their gold, that's what they're doing. And there's no other way to really write, given the nature of the times in which we find ourselves. We're in an age of great contention, an age of environmental disasters. So many big issues are pressing upon us, and I think the writer has to be bolder and dig deeper.
Now, you've taken themes that are recognisable from The Famished Road to your new children's book, and I'm fascinated in what made you take them to a children's book.
Well, I'm fascinated by the question of deforestation, environmental catastrophe, and childhood. I'm deeply interested in childhood, but I'm more interested in the eternal childhood in us. And I wanted to write for the eternal child. That's why my new book, Every Leaf a Hallelujah, is a kind of environmental...
Well, if he was the judge, he would be voting for Bewilderment, wouldn't he?
And about courage. It's the young people that are the great consciences of our age. To our shame, we adults. They're the ones who are bringing about the change. They're the ones who are asking the awkward questions. And that's why I was inspired to write this story, to draw upon that deep African childhood voice and speak to the world in a new way.
And right now, as COP26 is taking place in Glasgow, that feels so...
I was wondering when they were going to mention it.
Thank you so much, Ben Oakley.
Real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thought maybe Douglas Stewart would talk about it since it's taking place in Glasgow.
Time now to meet our final two shortlisted writers, starting this time with Richard Powers.
Bewilderment is about a 39-year-old
God, I love his voice.
father named Theo Byrne, who's attempting to raise his 9-year-old unusual son, Robin. Theo has received numerous conflicting diagnoses about what might be wrong with his boy, and he just doesn't know the way forward. Rather than treat the boy with medications before the diagnosis is certain, he enrolls the boy in an experimental therapy to attempt to train Robin in greater self-control and greater empathy. I did read a fair amount about astrobiology while researching the book, but I was also pleased to find a way to use it as a bridge between father and son. One of the few things that calms Robin down is his father taking him on a trip through the galaxy, stopping at various planets along the way and exploring how life might emerge in these very different locales.
God, I'm starting to cry just thinking about the story.
Had spent 2 days worrying over the silence of a galaxy that ought to be crawling with civilization. How could anyone protect a boy like that from his own imagination? Let alone from a few carnivorous third graders flinging shit at him. Alyssa would have propelled the three of us forward on our own bottomless forgiveness and bulldozer will. Without her, I was flailing. Twitched in my sleeping bag, trying not to wake Robin. Chorus of invertebrates swelled and ebbed. 2 barred owls traded their call and response. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? Who would ever cook for this boy? Aside from me. I couldn't imagine Robin toughening up enough to survive this Ponzi scheme of a planet. Maybe I didn't want him to. I liked him otherworldly.
Luke Norris reading Richard
Hello, I'd like to go on a camping trip with him.
Maggie Shipstead. Her extract is read by Ria Zimitrovic.
Great Circle is about a fictional female pilot named Marion Graves who disappears while trying to fly around the world north-south in 1950. And it's also about a contemporary movie star named Hadley Baxter who's playing Marion in a movie about her life. And I think more than anything, Great Circle is concerned with scale, because an individual human life is both really big and really small. So how do you measure your life against the scale of the planet? How do you measure your life against all the other lives being lived? How do you measure your life against the scale of time? So I tried to come at that in different directions and through different characters and their experiences. My travel writing and my fiction, in this case, became really symbiotic because I found myself pitching travel stories to places I wanted to go to fill in background for the book, and then also it happened to go places that I would then put in the book. So it really gave me a sense of the geography that Marion was covering in her flight, and in some ways a sense of the scale of the world as a whole.
The mountains are more rugged than any she's seen. This is real mountain flying.
I like music.
She should turn around, be on her way back to Montana, but gunning the engine, pulling her scarf up over her mouth and nose, she ascends 12,000 feet. Rock and blue ice loom up, hemming her in. Below, crevices fissure an ice field. In places, the snow has broken through and there is blackness underneath. The engine catches, sputters with disapproval. Too high, too cold. She circles and circles. The cold wind on her face feels as sharp and violent as glass shards. Her arms are so heavy she can barely work her feet on the rudder. No one will ever find her. No one will even know where to look. The blackness at the bottom of the crevice will swallow her. Snow will shroud her. But, on the other hand, then no one will know how foolish she'd been to come into these mountains. She will not give them her broken body.
The descriptions are so good in that novel. I just feel like I'm there. So powerful.
Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. Well, we have now found out a little about all 6 of this year's wonderful
Oh gosh, I'm getting a bit nervous and I'm almost out of alcohol. Oh, I shouldn't drink so fast.
Last year's winner, who knows how they're feeling right now.
Yay! Douglas Stewart.
Douglas, it's so good to see you in real life. Can I ask, what was it like to win the Booker during that long lockdown and then afterwards? And I hope you don't mind the analogy, but I felt it was a bit like being crowned Miss World, but not being able to carry out any of your duties.
I didn't get my crown until halfway through the year either. It was the most wonderful thing, but also incredibly surreal. As a debut novelist, I had nothing to bench it off of. And so to go from someone who published their novel in August and then to win the Booker in November was beyond my wildest dreams. But at the same time, it felt very, very unreal, meaning, in solidarity with COP26 happening in my hometown, I have to be the greenest Booker winner ever, because all the travelling I did was from my grey sofa. And so I was everywhere, and I was also nowhere at the same time. But it's been, that hasn't stopped the book, and stopped the book from reaching people all around the world.
Because you did global events, but just you had to do them from your
That's
front
right.
room. Now, you were a successful executive in the fashion industry for years, and I wondered how that affected your experience and your approach to marketing your novels.
The marketing was something I think that just understanding art and commerce together came quite naturally. But as someone who's been in the creative visual arts my whole life, I'm a very visual thinker. And I think about my writing in that way too. I try to hold texture and hold sensation together. I think about balance an awful lot. But I think also thinking about the world visually allows me to create quite an immersive experience with my writing and allows the readers to really step into the lives of my characters, I hope.
Does it liberate you a bit as well, having had a kind of whole career in a different creative field?
Actually, it made me incredibly nervous. I actually stepped away from my fashion career when Shuggie was first published because it was a book that had taken me 10 years to write, and I had written it in secret. I didn't want anyone else's judgment on me. I was a little bit nervous about feeling like an imposter. And so I wrote the book in secret, and when it was about to be published, I thought, I want to be so present for this. And then actually I published into a pandemic, which is not the ideal way to publish any time. But winning the Booker, I think, just was a huge relief.
Oh, wonderful. It's interesting watching that lovely interview with the Duchess of Cornwall, because bearing in mind the hardship of your youth, out of which Shuggie Bain came, I wonder how you reflect on that trip to Clarence House.
It was a bit of a pinch me moment. It was something I couldn't ever have thought of, and several times I thought, I'm in Clarence House, and it was very, very strange. But the one thing about winning the Booker is the journey has taken me to places I would never have been able to expect. And although I've been nowhere this year, my book has really gone everywhere. And one of the things that really struck me is that I had set out to write a very specific personal story about a family in Glasgow. And the way that the book has resonated with people in Australia and India, it's really touched the human condition in a lot of places. And that's been the most incredible journey.
Yeah. Can I ask, how will the shortlisted authors all in that front row be feeling right now?
Oh, they will be... Hopefully they're enjoying every moment of it, because it does, and they're laughing at me, but hopefully they're enjoying it, because it does, it feels like a bit of a fever dream afterwards, and so to try and be as present as you can in the moment. But it's just one of the most wonderful evenings, and actually it's great for me to be here to share their energy, because last year we all did it from our front rooms, from our living rooms, and so just to be here and to meet some other authors has been incredible.
Absolutely. Douglas, I'm so glad that we finally got to get you on a stage a year late. So thank you for coming. Thank you for willing to give the award, and do stay with us. Now,
His new novel's out next year. I'm really excited.
Trophy. It's shaped like a book, and we are very close to finding out who will be taking it away tonight. And the moment is finally upon us. And to make the announcement, please welcome back to the stage Chair of Judges, Maya Jassimov.
I've saved a sip of bubbly to enjoy when hearing who the winner is.
Now, I should say, you're not quite going to announce it yet, because we're going to ask a little bit. Sorry, I'm really sorry to all the shortlisted writers, but just a little sense of how you got to this decision. Because
apologise to all of us.
Is it true that the panel rereads the whole shortlist? And I wonder what that experience is like, the judging panel.
Absolutely. We read all of the books 3 times, all of us.
Mm.
And, you know, it's amazing how the books divulge new meanings each time you read them and you notice different things about them. And I think that's a testament to the greatness of all of the shortlisted titles, that they did repay multiple readings and in a very short time and from people with such different vantage points.
Is it fair to ask how it affected your decision, that rereading process?
Well, I think that the rereading does, as I say, let you see new things. It lets you appreciate different dimensions of what the authors are trying to do. It lets you reflect. You know, the first time we read, of course, was really quite hasty. And so, you know, having the chance to read and ponder and let things sink in over time, I think it inevitably changes the way you see a book. And I think it should. I think that's one of the great things that happens when readers connect with writing.
We were talking about how many of them have historical sort of resonance right now, and I wonder how hard it was to choose a winner out of these 6 fine books and writers.
It was incredibly difficult. I mean, we discussed these books at length, and every single one of these books had, you know, passionate support from us, and we loved what they were doing. And, you know, in some ways, I think we were so excited by the chance to meet and discuss that we wanted to keep on going. So it was really tough, but you know, I think it's important to remember that every single one of these shortlisted books is in its own way a winner.
Well, could you say a couple of words for those who aren't going to leave with the Booker Prize but have obviously impressed you so much?
Yeah, I mean, you guys you're gifted, you have incredible stories to tell, you tell them in amazing ways, and I hope you're going to keep on telling them, because I know I and all the judges and all the readers that I think have met you and your books in this process want to keep hearing from you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think it is over to you now to make the announcement.
Well, as I mentioned, it was tough. We arrived at a decision after a lot of discussion and arrived at a consensus around a book that is a real master of form and pushes the form in new ways, that has an incredible originality and fluidity of voice, and a book that's really dense with historical and metaphorical significance. And that book is The Promise by Damon Galgut.
It is! Oh. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people predicted this, and it's happened, and it's an amazing book. It's such a fascinating style. It's, oh my gosh, what's I gonna say? Having been nominated multiple times, now he's won it.
It's taken a long while to get here, and now that I have, I kind of feel that I shouldn't be here. This could just as easily have gone to any of the other amazing, talented people on this list, and a few others who aren't. But seeing as the good fortune's fallen to me, let me say, this has been a great year for African writing, and I'd like to accept this on behalf of all the stories told and untold, the writers heard and unheard from the remarkable continent that I'm part of. Please keep listening to us. There's a lot more to come. I want to thank, I have a lot of wonderful publishers, but in particular tonight I'd love to thank Clara Farmer and her fabulous team at Chatto and Windus. Thanks to my agent, Caroline Wood at the Felicity Bryan Agency, to my ex-agent, Tony Peake, who looked after me for 40-odd years until recently retiring. It's safe to say I wouldn't be here tonight without all of you. And then last but definitely not last, my thanks to the Booker judges and to everybody connected with this powerful prize. You know, it's changed my life, and please know that I am really profoundly, humbly grateful for this. Thank you.
Oh, it is, he's won. Oh. Wow, well, I mean, it's great. It's
Congratulations, and hold on tight to that award.
just an incredible
For a
novel.
long time. You've said it's been a long journey here. You have been shortlisted twice before. So again, to use another female analogy, no longer the bridesmaid. How does it feel to be the winner?
You better ask me that tomorrow, because my nerves have kind of gone numb. I'm stunned. I truly didn't expect to be standing here.
How does it feel to be a
Because you've said
bride?
that in the past, the spotlight kind of disappears from you, and when you don't win, so it's going to be on you for a while. It is an extraordinary novel. It's kind of sweeping like a camera from character to character. It even opens with a quote from Fellini. How filmic did you want this to be?
Well, I discovered that it wanted to be told in a filmic kind of way, that the narrative voice wanted to behave like a camera. I love cinema, but there are things cinema can never do. It cannot travel into the minds of people, into their thoughts and their innermost feelings. It can only suggest them, but prose can do that. So, you know, there's a limit to the camera analogy, but it does open up some possibilities.
And the idea of structuring the story around these 4 funerals, I gather that partly came from something you witnessed.
Well, something I heard actually from a friend, and it was the structure and the possibilities that the structure.
Better buy that friend a drink.
Much more than even the themes. It's what you can do, what you can do, and especially if you're playing with time. This particular structure allowed me to play in ways that were pleasing to me.
Well, talking about the history of South Africa over the last 30 years, it's been an incredibly dramatic and in some ways traumatic time. And I wondered, the woman at the heart of the book, Salome, is in many ways, you know, the woman who's been promised the house. She doesn't have much of a voice in the novel, literally, but that was deliberate, wasn't it? Tell me why.
It was a decision I took early on. You know, I could have inhabited Salome's thoughts in the way I did with the other characters. But I thought I made her silence and her absence, if you like, even though she's present in the story, more powerful if I never went there. So I filled in the space around her, I guess. The point to be made really is that a woman like Salome, a rural, uneducated black woman, is somebody, even in the new South Africa, who still has no voice. And I wanted that to register as almost a physical fact.
And we should say, how important is it that the book is also funny?
It's important to me. In all the previous novels, I keep getting told by critics that I have no sense of humor, which actually is not true. I find a lot of things very funny. So the particular narrative voice that I discovered for this book allowed me to, give voice to some of my humor, which is certainly a dark humor, but it's funny nevertheless, at least to me, and I guess a few other people.
And it's a mean question, but have you already got another book idea lined up?
I'm working on a collection of short stories, and beyond that, not yet, but I have always been slow, and I don't think that's going to change.
Well, you've got some time to have a think. Damon Galgut, thank you so much, and congratulations.
It is. Wow. Okay. That's the winner. I mean, yeah, but
Sadly, it from the Booker Prize ceremony. Congratulations again, Damon.
just what he said. I mean, the way he creates and forms that character through her absence, is really powerful. I mean, I wasn't sure about it because, I wondered, like, would the fact that it's so, like, embedded in the specific periods of time in history, like, work against it, but yeah, obviously the judges thought it really speaks to now, and it'll be interesting to hear how he thinks it does speak to now, which I might ask him a question about that. So there is going to be a press conference in a little bit of while, which I have a Zoom link to and to watch and enjoy, and so I'll check in again there soon. Okay, I've just had to readjust a little bit, and the press conference through Zoom is going to start soon. So that gives me just a few minutes to fix myself another little cocktail. This time I have a canned vodka and soda, which I'm going to pour into my little glass here to celebrate, because I ran out of fizz. Here we go. And yeah, I'm debating. There's quite a lot I'd like to ask Damon Galgut about his Booker Prize winning novel, but it's hard to decide what question to pick on. So I'm gonna have a few sips and then decide. Trying to move it to a point where I can see and be seen on the video, but also you can see it. So I think that might work well. I'm still waiting. The host has to let everyone in.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome back to some of you. Welcome to the immediate aftermath of the Booker Prize ceremony of 2021. If you wouldn't mind, would you please unmute yourselves and join me in congratulating the Booker Prize winner, Damon Galgut, who is here. Woo! Thank you. Damon is sitting here with Maya Jasnoff, who some of you met earlier, chair of the judges. If you would like to ask them any questions, which I'm sure you would, please put them in the chat and I will, attempt to chair the discussion. First of all, Damon, how are you feeling?
I'm a little more like my old self, thank you. I had an out-of-body experience for a while, but I seem to be back where I belong.
Actually, you can unmute yourselves if you'd like to do it that way, if it's complicated. Okay, I'll just read a question from Jill Lawless. For you, Damon, you accepted the prize on behalf of African writers heard and unheard. Do you think they or you are becoming more heard?
Well, the fact that the Nobel Prize winner this year came from Africa, the fact that it was given to an African would suggest that perhaps volume is going up in Africa. I mean, I hope that's process will continue and that people will take African writing a little more seriously, because there's a lot of great writing coming from this.
Thank you. Sean, I'll come to you in a second. I think David Sanson has his hand up. Would you like to say something, David?
Hi, Damon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I ask about the semi-drunken afternoon where you were exchanging funeral anecdotes, which was the inspiration, or which gave you the impetus, the idea for this funeral scenario, the funeral framing of the novel? I mean, how drunk were you?
That's kind of hard to pin down. Fairly drunk. It was with a friend, and I wasn't doing literary research. I was just having a good lunch, and he was making me laugh. It was really only afterwards that what he'd been saying to me took a kind of serious root in my brain and suggested that I turn into a narrative.
Thank you. Sean, coming back to you. Sean Bailey's question. Congrats. What message would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career in light of winning tonight's prize?
Persist, he said, if you couldn't hear.
Okay. And Eric Anderson asks, Maya, sorry, I've got a slight echo here, slightly distracting. Maya, you mentioned how this novel is set in specific historical periods, but it speaks to the present. What do you think this story says about our present? I think that's for you, Damon.
Well, I can only really talk in the South African context. I didn't plan for the overall trajectory of the book to be a downward one, but I think it's pretty clear if you look at each section of the book that things are declining and coming apart at the seams. So I think the portrait it perhaps paints of modern South Africa is not a happy one, but I, as I say, I had no agenda in describing it that way, but things are not great with us right now. So you could read that as a warning or a portrait, I don't know, but South Africa has seen better days.
Thank you. I think you've just answered this question elsewhere, but what is there anything special you're planning on spending the prize money on?
They always ask that.
I promise I haven't given that matter any thought at all. I guess I will.
I'll ask another question since no one else is chipping in.
Anyone else have a question? You can ask it in any form.
Yeah, I've got another one, Gabby, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So, Damon, you seem to be, from previous interviews, you seem to be a bit nervous about the implications of this victory with the increased profile, etc. I wonder if you worry about how it will affect your creative process.
It is a worry. You know, most writers require solitude, many hours of it to work properly. Even the, you know, relatively limited amount of attention that's come to me in previous years has eaten into that. So I have only a dim sense of what winning this prize might mean for my future. So yeah, it is a concern. But I guess there are ways and strategies to keep your time to yourself. Again, simply because I really didn't expect to win tonight, I haven't given the matter too much thought, but I will be thinking about it quite sharply in the coming days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damon. Anita Setti's got a question. Congratulations. You said in a recent interview the Booker pulls a nasty little trick on you right at the very end. For a few weeks, you're one of 6 winners, and then all that attention gets sucked away. Very, very suddenly, there's only one winner. The rest of you are losers. And the question is, what was it like finding the motivation to write the next book following the previous shortlist experiences in that time period described in the quote?
Well, you know, I mean, yeah, the Booker has done that to me a couple of times, but you do bounce back from that. You know, only one person can win, realistically. You don't sit and mourn that fact. So, no, you go back to being a writer, you go back to being solitary. I've got no doubt that the other people on the list are feeling what I described, you know, the attention being sucked elsewhere, but they will all go on working just as I did. Maybe, as I said earlier, more difficult for me to resume work in the way that I'd like to, but I'll find out.
You said that being funny was important for you. Can you expand on that, Lucy asks? Why is it important to mix serious issues with humour?
Well, it is important in a personal sense because I was always slightly bemused at being perceived as humorless when I don't see myself that way, and I don't think my friends see me that way. In the case of this particular book, you know, the raw material, funerals, death, decay, dereliction, those are heavy topics. I don't think I would have wanted to spend 4 years writing a book that was, you know, pulling me down with such a heavy gravity. Humor has the opposite effect. It's a kind of antidote. So, yeah, it opened up a space in which I could find the human side of things, because the book's not really about the dead, it's about the living, and the living can very often be amusing.
Occasionally. Eric Anderson asks, there's a striking moment in the novel where the narrator speaks directly to the reader, and you write, if Salome, I think you pronounce it, if Salome's home hasn't been mentioned before, it's because you have not asked, you didn't care to know. What effect did you want to create with this line, or what questions did you want it to raise for the reader?
Well, it's not the only moment in the book where the narrator addresses the reader directly, but it is probably the most crucial one. I did, you know, wrestle with myself over the question of giving Salome a voice, an interior voice, in the same way that I did with the other characters. But I pulled back from that because, as I explained earlier, I wanted her silence to be eloquent. But by turning the narrative around and pointing a finger, as it were, at the reader at that moment, I wanted the reader to feel that they may be complicit in her lack of voice, and to question why that may be. So yeah, it's always been part of my motivation as a writer to try to leave readers disturbed, unsettled, and I hope that moment would have that effect.
Very good answer. Phew, they fixed the echo as well.
Is it correct that you work with your editor Clara Farmer at another publisher before Chatto, and how does your creative relationship work?
Clara Farmer used to work at Atlantic Books, and my earlier novel, The Good Doctor, was picked up by her there. She did an absolutely wonderful job with it, and then she moved on from Atlantic. I stayed on because Atlantic had treated me extremely well, but a really good editor is like gold, actually. And what I mean by a good editor is somebody who understands what you're doing without you having to translate your intentions. I've always felt that with Clara, that she gets me, she gets the book, we speak the same language, and that's a relationship that's very hard to replace. So I'm very glad to be reconnected with her. I feel that I'm in safe hands.
Oh, that's good.
Eric asks, you've mentioned how writing film scripts inspired the way you approach the style of this novel. Do you think the novel could be made into a film, and is this a project that would interest you?
I love cinema. I watch films every other day, actually. I would think there's some challenges with this particular book simply because characters age from teenagehood to midlife.
That's true.
It's very hard to do that
Yeah.
persuasively and convincingly, but movies are rising to that challenge. Yeah, I'd be very open to the possibility. But of course, it's not up to me to make that happen. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you. I'm just looking to see if I may have missed a question, but please keep asking them.
I've asked 3 questions. Other people can ask questions too.
Eric, I seem to have lost a question of yours.
No, you answered all of them.
Can you unmute yourself and ask if that's right? No. Okay. Well. And he just said he has a question.
No,
I wonder what you
he
think
answered all my
the
questions.
powers that be to finally fulfill their promises.
Depends where you are and which powers you're dealing with.
It's great Anita's happy and asking questions too. Do you remember I saw her at the Women's Prize
Not alone
party?
at the moment in having a government that's seriously disconnected from its people and what they need. I have no wisdom to offer on that front because very often that state of affairs can continue for a very long time. As a writer, all you can really do is draw attention to it, I guess. I'm not one of those people who believe that, books can change the world. I believe that books reflect it. The more acutely you can make people feel a situation, the more chance there is that situation may change. But in my belief, that's as far as it goes.
Thank you. Anyone else, please ask a question. And Eric, I'm just going to repeat that. I can't actually find, I know you had a question that my computer is not letting me see. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask it, please do.
Oh, that's so embarrassing. He answered all my questions.
Anyone else?
Why doesn't anyone else have questions? Why am I the only one asking questions?
No more questions? Damon, is there anything else you'd like to say?
There's a great deal I'll think of in the morning, but at the moment, I'm afraid my sense of being generally dazed continues. So,
have a drink, Damon.
Not off the top of my head.
And Maya, would you like to add anything?
I just want to, I suppose, express on behalf of all of the judges great admiration for your work and how happy we were to be able to recognize it among, of course, many other fine books. And that we really hope that this book will reach readers around the world in ways that it might not have otherwise, and that it will give, as you just said earlier, South Africa is not the only country in which there are big disconnects between people and power. And I hope that the people who read this book and engage with it will be able to reflect in their own worlds and their own terms on some of the things that you put before us so well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Just quickly, Neil Denny is asking, when is the book out in paperback? Do you know, Damon?
I don't actually.
Authors never know when their books are coming out.
I think, Neil, that might be a question for his publisher. So thank you all very much, and congratulations again, Damon. Maya, thank you for an extraordinary year of guidance and intellectual heft. It's been incredible to listen to the judges discussing these books throughout the year, and I hope, if you haven't read all of them, I hope you enjoyed them too, all 6, all 13 indeed. Have a good night.
Bye. Okay, that was slightly awkward. Yeah, but that's how it goes with Zoom meetings, isn't it? And yeah, I feel bad because I started typing a question and then sent it accidentally, and so retyped it below. So that's why Gabby thought that I had a question that hadn't been asked. But yeah, then I didn't want to unmute myself and say, sorry, I don't have another question. Oh, God. Anyway, I'm going to have another drink now and, yeah, toast the Booker Prize and the winner, the promise. So yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this winner? Was it your choice to win? Are you happy it won, even if it wasn't your choice? Or were you really rooting for another book? And what do you think about the whole prize ceremony in general? Let me know about it in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed watching this and had a drink to enjoy it along with me. And I'll speak to you again soon. That's all. Bye-bye.